Oh, hello, everyone. Welcome. This will be our August. This is August, right? August Baton Rouge.net user group. So I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I will be your host. My name is Brian McCoy. I've been running this bad boy for a little while now. So thank everyone for tuning in and joining me tonight. I have Jeremy Cronin and Jeremy Knight in the background. They will be helping me run the stream as usual, looking out for any comments you have in the chat. So please be sure to utilize that. And then also our speaker, but we will get to that in a second because I may be as excited as I've ever been about having a speaker on. So this should be a lot of fun. So once again, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. I know it's been a lot of things have been going on. We were talking about potential in-person meetings last go around. We're probably not going to talk about that anymore for a while, but we'll continue to be here. So for those of you who don't know, we are the Baton Rouge.net and Home of Thibodeau user groups. We've been on Twitch for almost a year now, so we're coming up on that anniversary. We'll be live streaming for almost a year now, not necessarily on Twitch. But we're here second Wednesday of every month and some Sundays. So be sure to check us out. As always, we have our Discord going. So if you're interested, Jeremy Knight has been doing a fantastic job of managing that, as well as our Twitch commands. So please be sure to utilize those if you're looking for how to get in touch with us. Discord's always a good way. We've actually introduced threading into our Discord. So there is an event thread for tonight if you want to use that for any questions or comments you have there. If not, you can always use the stream chat. We'll be monitoring both. I believe we have Twitch commands for pretty much anything, Twitter, Facebook. Those are all places you can find out more about the group. We also have meetup links below. If you ever need anything from us or how to get in touch with us or anything like that, just be sure to utilize those social media posts that we have down there. Oh, look, we also have a Teals one. That's awesome. So for those of you who don't know, we are big supporters of Teals in Louisiana, and that is getting kicked off. For those of you who've missed it, Lucia was on a few months ago helping recruit. We've had a fantastic turnout from the Baton Rouge.net user group community and everybody who's kind of come in from outside of Baton Rouge since we started streaming. So we really appreciate that. And Lucia will be on in 2 months to talk about how that's going. So we're going to try to put a panel together and get more info out there so people can actually see how the community you're a part of is making a difference in the community that it belongs to. So let's see, what else do we have? As always, awesome. We have somebody from Kansas City. That's fantastic. I imagine tonight we may get a few additional viewers, which would be great. As always, we're looking for speakers. This is a community channel. It's not owned by anyone individually. It's owned by our our Baton Rouge.net organization. So if you want to come on and present anything, you're more than welcome to. Just reach out to somebody on the team and we'll make that happen. We've done some Sunday shorts, as we call them, where it's just live coding jams or whatever just so people can have a relaxed environment to share their knowledge. We do export all of that stuff to our YouTube channel. So please go and check our YouTube channel out. Let's see, what else do we have as I run through my list of things? Let's see, well, I guess that sums up about everything. Again, thanks everyone for coming out tonight. And I guess we can go ahead and bring our speaker for this evening up, Mr. Jeff Fritz.
Oh. I'm on mute. I muted myself. What is that? Oh my gosh. Hello.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm full. I just had some dinner, had a little bit of chili. I'm feeling good. Let's talk about Blazor.
Let's talk about Blazor. That's awesome. So first of all, I want to thank you so much for coming. I've pre-warned him. Mr. Jeff Fritz is the reason or a big reason or inspiration as to why we're doing this on Twitch. COVID hit. We were in-person meetings. We had people. Jeremy Knight has run the Home of Thibodeau. For people not in Louisiana, they're about 2 hours away from us in a small college town in Louisiana. We're based out of Baton Rouge. We needed a new home. We bounced around a little bit. We ended up on Twitch, and I think we've been doing pretty well ever since then. So a shout out to Jeff and everything he's done for the .NET community and kind of helping us migrate to our new home, which at this point looks like it just may be here forever. So either way, we're enjoying it. We're having a lot of fun. And I'll go ahead and give you the floor and let you take over.
Oh gosh, thank you. I was looking for an appropriate hat to wear for tonight, and I don't have an LSU Tigers hat. I don't have a Saints hat or a jersey appropriate to wear. So I went Twitch. I went with my own C# hat. I figured that kind of worked for the evening.
That's okay. What we will do is, I don't know if you've seen it, but we have a little, so just so you know, a little background about us. We actually are an organization, a Baton Rouge user group organization. We have SQL Server, we have Power BI and Analytics. They're kind of on hiatus right now. We do the .NET side. And you see a little face. It's red. Ours is purple. But what we need to do is have you a hat made. And I will figure out how to make that happen. We will send it to you as an honorary member of the .NET user group. We'll go ahead and see if we can get that embroidered.
Oh my gosh.
I think we know somebody who may have been on your stream a few times that could help us out with that. I'll reach out to her and see.
Yeah, there's somebody over there that can help out, I'm sure.
So we're obviously fans. We watch, we lurk, we do all that fun stuff. So
well, thank you.
Anyway, just thanks so much for being here, and we'll see about getting you a hat for your collection. Very
cool. All right. We're going to talk about the hat collection a little bit tonight. As a matter of fact, we'll get into it, and we're going to talk about, yes, I collect hats, lots and lots and lots of hats, and I needed some place to put them, and I didn't want to spend more money on them, so I figured, you know what, I'm gonna use my Blazor knowledge, I'm going to use my Azure knowledge, and I'm going to put them out on the web so that folks can find this magnificent collection, and it's been growing steadily. And my wife cringes every time she looks at it, but that's a whole nother story. We should get in and talk about how we get there.
All right. Well, all right, Jeremy, you can take me off and add
on the screen share. So there we go. It's right over there. Take it up. Take a look. We're going to talk about no-cost websites with Azure and Blazor. So my name's Jeff Fritz. You can find me on all the social medias, all the places. I do a little bit here on Twitch. You can find me on YouTube, Twitch, GitHub, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Yeah, I'm C# Fritz just about everywhere. Other places that I'm not C# Fritz, I'm not doing anything social. I'm not on that platform. So if you find somebody else who's C# Fritz on a platform and it's not me, it's not me. It typically, nobody's tried to get C# Fritz from me. I tried to get VB Fritz on Twitter. I thought that would be cool to have that one also. Because, Visual Basic is still a thing. I have F# Fritz, but VB Fritz I couldn't get. Somebody else actually has that one. Anyways, so let's talk about Blazor. Let's talk about Azure, because these are things that I, as a .NET developer, and I'm a program manager on Microsoft's .NET team, specializing in community interactions, particularly live video events and producing content around Blazor, getting folks up to speed on Blazor, making sure that you can be successful with Blazor. So I ran into this problem with, I wanted to display my hat collection, and this spoke to me when I saw about static websites on Azure. How can we do this with no cost? Because I don't want to spend money on hosting things that I don't need to. You know what I'm saying? So let's get into this. Let's talk about what we can do with pulling this together. Because when I build a website, of course, I like Blazor. I want to use Blazor. Blazor's my jam. I want to be over there and use Blazor because it feels right to me. I love being able to write C# and .NET code that lives in the browser, runs in the browser, and gives folks a really cool experience. I'm keeping an eye on Twitch chat over here and taking a look over here. Looking through here. VB Fritz might die soon. I don't know about that, JF Kansas. I don't know. It's not doing too bad out there, Visual Basic. But we're having a good time with C#, and that's where my heart lies. So when I build with Blazor, I want to deploy it so other folks can go out and see it and interact with those websites. So of course, I'm going to integrate Blazor with Azure, because Azure's fantastic cloud hosting solution. I can build and deploy there and host it in all kinds of different places, all kinds of data centers. So for me as a .NET developer who is familiar with Azure, this kind of makes sense. I want to put these two together. I want to build my Blazor app, deploy it to Azure, and not have to think too much about it. Know what I'm saying? Make this run as easy as possible. When I think about, I don't want to have to worry about how I deploy to Azure. I don't want to think about the process that's going to go from commit to source control to Azure. Of course, that means I'm going to bring in my friends at GitHub. GitHub's fantastic for storing and not just doing source control, but now with GitHub Actions, GitHub Codespaces, and GitHub Codespace is now available for folks in enterprise and Teams configurations. Fantastic stuff. But I can build and deploy and let those actions trigger. I can build, let actions trigger, and make sure that they deploy automatically out to Azure. That's the goal that we want here. Is I want these three technologies to work together. And quite frankly, I'm a developer. I want to spend my time in that top left circle. I want to spend my time in Blazor. Let the Azure and GitHub thing just do its thing and serve my application. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to worry about all of that stuff. So let's start talking about Blazor to start. Let's make sure that we're all on the same page about what we can do with Blazor, and particularly Blazor WebAssembly is the variety that we're concerned here. Blazor WebAssembly runs entirely in your browser using HTML5 standard technology called WebAssembly. Now, you build with .NET Core 3.1.5 or now .NET 6. You're going to compile that code, and it's going to run DLLs inside the browser. Now, you should be familiar with Blazor WebAssembly at this point. It's been around for a little bit. We've been in RTM mode now for more than 2 years. It was released as RTM in 2019, spring of 2019, upgraded with .NET 5 last year, and now here we are looking at .NET 6 coming out in the fall 2021, and we're really excited for some of the performance improvements, some of the working productivity improvements that you're going to get as a developer working with Blazor with .NET 6. More on that in a minute. But when you build with this, because it's DLLs, because it's code that's going to run in the browser, just like our friends that build with Vue or Angular or React, or choose your favorite JavaScript framework, we can also build and deploy not just on some server-side rendering host like ASP.NET Core, but we can also deploy and run it on a static web page, because all the processing, all the work is occurring in the browser. That's pretty important to understand and connect with here. Is, well, if everything's running in the browser, then nothing has to run on the server. Let me show you a quick demo about Blazor. Let me go through the introduction of Blazor WebAssembly and show you the nuts and bolts of getting started with Blazor WebAssembly, because it's not too hard to do. But then I want to show you how we can take some next steps and bring in progressive web app technologies. Let me start with this, getting started with Blazor WebAssembly. So everything you want to find to get started with Blazor, if you navigate to blazor.net, navigate there, it's going to take you to this page, which is under .net, Microsoft.com, apps, blah, 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 /Blazor. Who cares? Go to blazor.net, all right? I should have worn the jacket. Ryan, why didn't I wear the jacket? I should have worn the jacket. Darn it. I don't have the jacket with me. It's in the other room. We'll get back to that. So all the information, everything you need to get started, to download, to get everything ready to go on your workstation is available here from blazor.net. So there's get started link here that'll take you through very simple tutorial here just to get you up and running. And of course, Blazor runs on .NET Core and now .NET 5, .NET 6. So it works. You can build and develop on Windows, Linux, Mac OS. Your choice. You can use whatever tools you'd like to build and work with Blazor. So you just have to download the appropriate SDK, the correct command line tools for your your workstation to get it installed and running. Now, it's not going to work with .NET Framework. Sorry. You need to step forward and use one of the new modern versions of .NET Core or .NET 5, soon to be .NET 6. And we can get started in any browser, any editor, and at the command line. Or if you'd like, you can get started with Visual Studio. Visual Studio for Mac, there's templates built in there. I want to show you an initial how you get started at the command line, because I think that's the least common denominator that a lot of folks see and gets you up and running. Now, of course, there's great templates in Visual Studio 2019, Visual Studio 2022, Visual Studio for Mac. Did I cover everything? Did I get all the Visual Studios there? I think I got all the Visual Studios. So let me show you real quick here at the command line. I've got I'm going to work here in a folder for the Baton Rouge user group. So I'm starting in this location. Now, if I do a .NET new Blazor WebAssembly, I'm going to pass in a help argument here. I'm going to get a whole bunch of parameters and things that I can set for the Blazor WebAssembly template that you can build with. And I can specify different target framework versions. So for my command line tool I've installed, I can specify .NET 6, .NET 5, .NET Core App 3.1 if I want to target those different versions of .NET. I can tell it whether or not to restore dependencies, right? We go out to NuGet, NuGet.org, our package repository, if we want to install those dependencies right away. Whether or not it should be hosted on an ASP.NET Core host, will actually deploy and configure multiple projects for you, including that ASP.NET Core host that will host your running Blazor application. But I want to get into a static website. So by default, I'm not going to configure that. So there's a bunch of stuff here if you want to configure security, Azure Active Directory, blah, 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 security. We'll get into this one in the next demo, talking about progressive web apps. So let's do this. Let's create my first Blazor WebAssembly application. I'm going to call this first Blazor. All right. So .NET new Blazor WASM -o space first Blazor. So we're going to create that, put that down on disk. Here it is. It's going to restore it. Less than half a second. We've got our project built. It's right there. And when we take a look at this, if you're familiar with .NET Core, if you're familiar with ASP.NET Core, these folders should actually make a bit of sense. You've got a dub root folder here. That dub root folder, of course, has our static content, right? Our images, our scripts, our CSS files. You better not have any JavaScript in there. If you have JavaScript in there, we're not doing the project right. Yeah. So there's shared content in there. There's pages. Those kind of look familiar if you're a Razor developer. If you've been building with Razor pages, building with ASP.NET Core, those should look familiar, but their contents will not. Let's take a look. I'm going to open Visual Studio Code here for this folder. Do I trust the authors? Of course I trust the authors. I wrote it. So here we are. First Blazor. Here's my folders. Here's the project structure. And if we look in dub root, of course, we have a CSS folder. We've got some sample data, some JSON that we're going to present and reach out to. I've got some dependencies installing here. No matter. You do your thing down there, dependencies. I've got an index.html file. I mentioned this is a static website. There are no moving parts on the server. So I have an HTML file here. And this HTML file that you see, it's over there. It's on that side. It kind of looks like a normal web page. I've got some header information here. I've got a body. I've got a div with an ID of app, and it says loading in there. I've got another div here called Blazor error UI. Yeah, thanks so much. No, not right now. And it says unhandled error. So I've got an error handling user interface. If something pops up that I need to address, it's right there. And I've got a script block that says Blazor WebAssembly.js. This is what's going to start our Blazor application in the browser. So just like our friends who use use JavaScript, to use Angular or Vue or React, they've got scripts that load up that start their application and find the appropriate place on the web page to inject that JavaScript application and get it to start working. This is the tool. This is the thing that does that for us right here. Okay, so let's take one more step into this. This app here, div ID equals app, is referencing this app.razor file. This is where our application router is defined. How do we get from page to page? How does each of the pages decide when and how to render? So it's going to look for pages in this assembly. It's going to look for the type of the program class and grab that assembly. That's where it's going to look for stuff. And we're going to, if we find the route that's requested, we're going to display that view, that content, and it's going to have a default layout. By default, we're going to apply a layout called main layout. I know Razor. I've used CSHTML templates before. I know what that is, what layouts are. And you're right. We have a main layout, and it looks just like regular Razor. You're used to seeing this. If you've done MVC at all since 2010, you've seen Razor files. They look like this, but they're typically a .cshtml. Different. Slightly different syntax we're going to see here because it's got a .razor extension. You see that here. Now, .razor means that this is going to be parsed, rendered, and handled by the Blazor runtime. Okay. So we've defined a layout here, and other than this first line, don't look at the first line for right now. There's nothing to see there. The rest of this content pretty much looks like what we've seen in ASP.NET MVC Razor layouts. I've got a body directive down here that's going to call out and say, we'll inject the content of whatever page is requested here. Okay, that makes sense. I can buy into that. So where's my actual views and things? Well, you don't have models, views, and controllers in Blazor. You do have pages, just like you have Razor pages, the .cshtml Razor pages in ASP.NET Core. You have pages here in Blazor. And once again, they're not CSHTML files, they're .razor files. So I've got things like index.razor here and a hello world, welcome to your app, and some other tag here, survey prompt. That's not an HTML5 tag. That's a component reference. Let me show you. Let's run the application and actually see what this looks like. So I'll .NET run my application right there at the command line. I could do this inside of Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio, but I'm going to run it at the command line because there's nothing hiding up my sleeves. I'm not wearing sleeves. I've got short sleeves on. But I want you to see just what it means when this is running. So I'm running in Firefox here because I like Firefox, but this works in all the browsers. And there's my hello world content. That page that was requested, that was defined as hello world right there, is being rendered inside my layout. So let's remind you, my layout had the body appearing here. There was a top row with an about link that goes out to blazor.net. There's the about link. And you can see in the bottom left corner there, it goes out to blazor.net. Okay, big deal. This is the template. Great, you rendered some content. That survey prompt thing here, where did that come from? So Blazor is a component-oriented framework. You can build components that can be referenced by other components. So when we take a look at my main layout here, when we look at the index, it's referencing this thing called survey prompt. Survey prompt is right here in the shared folder. So we can create components that other .razor files can reference by naming our files whatever .razor, and we can use that base part of the file name as our component tag name that we reference in our pages. So if I go back to index up here, survey prompt references survey prompt.razor, and the contents of this are emitted here. That's got to be the easiest component model framework to figure out and start using. I mean, come on. There's nothing to this. You literally name the file what you want your tag name to be, and boom, there it is. Okay. So I also have these other pages here, fetch data and counter. So let's go to counter, and we'll talk about this in a second here. So here's the counter page. It's referenced here in my navigation bar right there on the left side. I click that and it takes me to counter, current count, and click me. And here it is, counter, current count, and that button with click me. The page directive at the top, that indicates that this is a page that will be routed to, and this is the address to listen to. So if I navigate directly to /counter, serve this content. And the Blazor runtime knows how to do that for us. So the only difference between my counter and my survey prompt is the survey prompt doesn't have that tag at the top. I can't go over here and navigate to survey prompt. There's nothing there. Wait, how does it know to present that? Remember back over here, we saw that app razor. When that address is not found, it's going to use the same main layout that we've seen before, but because it doesn't have a body to route to, it just emits this paragraph. Sorry, there's nothing at this address. Sorry, there's nothing at this address. So here's some placeholder text. And if I tell it to restart the application, now I'm going to run it this time with .NET Watch. Now this is going to enable hot reload for us. And it opened it in the wrong browser. Back over here. Now, when I try to go to survey prompt, right, I'm getting that text. Okay, so you've got some guarantee now that that text in App Razor is appearing here. Okay, so that also works the other way. I can take this counter that we had defined right here, right? Not only is this a page, but it's also a component. Just because it has that page directive on the first line means it can also be referenced and used as a component, not just a page. So I can go over to my index page here. Let's get rid of the survey prompt, and I can just put in counter. I'll go back over here, go back to my home page, and counter is there. I'll remove it, and it's gone. Wait a minute. How'd you do that? How did it load it so fast? This is hot reload. This is a feature of .NET 6. I didn't even hit save. Auto save that's happening in the background in Visual Studio Code saved. The .NET command line here woke up, saw that the file changed, and patched the browser for me. No keystrokes, nothing happening there. It just loads your content. More on that in a minute. So that's fine. I've got my counter over here. Let's actually talk about writing some C# into this. So far at this point, I've just moved around and talked about some funny pictures and things on screen. There's code going on in here. Let me put some character returns here so you can see what's going on. Because I want you to see both at the same time. This is a button. It's an HTML button. It says click me. It's right there, right? And when I click it, I want it to do something. And when I do click it, it increments that counter. It's doing C#. On click here looks like the JavaScript on click. Looks like the JavaScript on click handler, but it's not. Because it has the @ in front of it, we turn it into a .NET, a C# on-click handler, and we put the hooks in there that says there's .NET code that you're going to execute when this button is clicked. The button knows how to raise the click event. The on-click handler is the code we're going to execute when that click event happens. And we're going to execute a method called increment count, and it's defined right here in a code block. Now, you may have seen something similar to code blocks in Razor with ASP.NET Core. We had a functions block. Very similar, but now we call it code with Razor, like with Blazor. Like I mentioned, this is very similar to ASP.NET MVC and ASP.NET Core, how they use Razor, but a couple of slight differences, and this is one of them. Inside of a code block, inside of a functions block, in previous versions before Blazor, you can't use functions here, it's code. You can define fields, properties, and methods that you want to be executed from elsewhere inside your template. And that's what we've done here. Of course, we're familiar with C#. We know that this is a little private method called increment count. I've defined a pointer back to this method, and all I'm doing is saying current count plus plus. Just increment that value, and there's my field. Now, that field, we're used to seeing output echoed on our MVC Razor views right here with something like this. And when that value changes and we refresh the browser, it should repaint. But because with Blazor, since everything's executing in the WebAssembly model in the browser, we've effectively got two-way binding here. Because this is defined here and points to this field, when this field is updated, it's going to repaint that section of the web page. So when I click this, it increments that value, and Blazor knows to repaint that value right there. So, right, I mean, and we can play some games here, and we'll see that update, and it's bold, and it continues to work. It's hot reloaded. It's continued to do it, even though I've changed some of my styles and tags and things, right? I don't know. Let's make it purple. So there it is, purple. Whatever. Okay. So things that you can do that don't really affect how Blazor is formatting your content. It knows and can handle, well, here's where the content is. Here's how I'm going to format and run the C# in the browser. Fantastic stuff. Okay, so that's just like scratching the surface. We saw with the survey prompt, we could pass parameters into this. Let me set up a quick parameter here. So let's set up a parameter. I'm going to call this, nope, property isn't going to work. Public int, and let's call this the increment, right? And look at this. It doesn't know what to do over here because I'm not done writing my code. No matter. So get set, and we're going to increment by 1. And we're going to say plus equals increment. And that code recompiles, works, and I can click here and it increments by 1. Now, if I want to make that a parameter that somebody passes into this, right? So that you can put attributes on this tag so that it modifies, it changes the behavior of that component. All you have to do to make it a parameter on this element is decorate it with a parameter attribute. C# developers, we know how to do this. How we doing there?
I'm doing good. We have a question. I was going to try to not rudely interrupt you, but is Hot Reload still VS Code and CLI only, or full Visual Studio?
Full Visual Studio has Hot Reload. Full Visual Studio 2019 will trigger Hot Reload, but Full Visual Studio 2022 has some even better implementation of Hot Reload, not just for Blazor, but and we've experimented and seen this live on my stream. We've got Hot Reload working with other .NET apps, including, and this is the weird one to me, Azure Functions. So I'll be tuning, debugging, and watching the behavior of an Azure Functions app, and oh gosh, this isn't doing the right thing. I'll reach into the code of that Functions app, change a little bit of it, save, and there's a button in Visual Studio 2022. I don't have it installed on this machine, but there's a button to hot reload, and it patches the running application, and the new feature just works and goes along. Really cool stuff. For folks that are working at the command line with Blazor, you're going to have a good experience, just like you're seeing me do here, but it gets even better in full Visual Studio, whether it's 2019 or 2022. 2022 and forward are going to have even better experience for you because of how we're going to integrate with the rest of the IDE tools. So
that's awesome. Awesome answer.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for the question, Brian. And I see Jeremy there in chat with the question. Very cool. All right. So I added the parameter here so that we can define and pass this in. And since I have a default assigned here, it's not required. I don't need to define anything here. So I'm going to go back over to my index and I'm going to add, look at this. The Visual Studio is telling me I know what that is. So I'm going to say increment equals, and I'll make the increment 5. And it's going to patch, and I can click, and it's now incrementing by 5. Now, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I know you're grouchy, and you're still going to be grouchy here, aren't you? That's fine. Be that way. But it patches and works. If I go back over to the original counter page, notice it still increments by 1s because it doesn't have the increment 5 being passed in there. So I'll go back over to home. I'll click an increment by 5s, and I'll click this and change it to 2, and now it's counting by 2s. So hot reload is pretty impressive because you can just keep right on working as you're making changes to things. But it can also get you into a weird state in your application. Those are the times where you're going to want to refresh or force a full rebuild of your application. The tool here is it should have, where is it? There is a hotkey definition way up at the top here. If you press Control R, it'll do a full restart of building the application. So it builds it from scratch, and it actually sends a message into the browser using a WebSocket and forces the web browser to refresh completely. And it still works, and away we go. So, okay, we've played with numbers in the browser. We've done some interesting formatting and CSS, a big deal. Let me show you the last piece of this demo, and that's the fetch data page here. Because let's face it, it's one thing to present stuff in the browser, but you're going to want to get data from microservices or some other service or some other, maybe a database endpoint that you want to bring into your application and show off. You want to demonstrate so that folks can interact with it and hopefully have a good time using your application. So how do we do that? How do we get data from somewhere else? Well, from our knowledge of .NET, we have an HTTP client, of course. So if we want to fetch data from somewhere else, we can instantiate the same HTTP client that you might use in a console application or an ASP.NET application, WPF or WinForms, and we can inject that into our application using the inject directive up here. Just like you do in other Razor templates, you can inject dependencies using the inject directive. And I have some code down here that is going to respond to an event on the page. Oh, Fritz, you got events for me again? I thought we were done with that with web forms. No, it's okay. There's 3 events here, and they're events that you're going to want to manage and be aware of. This one, on initialized async, it runs when the component is initialized. And all I'm saying is use HTTP get from this JSON data source something in the shape of what looks like a weather forecast array. And it's living at this location, sample data /weather.json. And we're going to stick that weather forecast array into this forecasts field. Now, my weather forecasts look like this. I've got a date, temperature in Celsius, summary, temperature in freedom units over here. So folks can, of course, see the temperature in their favorite units, and there it is. That's just some code that some numbers that were generated, and they're sitting there on disk, and it's just fetched that data and presented it. Now, okay, that's a good start, but if I want to go and fetch and post and put and delete all of those things, you can do them the exact same way that you would in other frameworks by working with your HTTP client here. So it's been injected as the variable name HTTP. I can interact with them by just using some of the other methods on my HTTP here. So right, I can post and send up some JSON. Right, put of course is in there, and delete. So you can work with that stuff if you want to be able to manipulate that content. Now, when I get those forecasts into this field, I'm just going to run a quick for each across that collection and output. This looks like pretty standard garden variety Razor. Used to seeing that fantastic outputs, and there it is on the page. And the one thing we do have to be aware of is Blazor renders this entire page, all of this content, before it starts executing this code. So we need to actually say, well, if forecast is null, if that field doesn't have data yet, let's output a little loading block of text. But once it does have data, then we'll output our table. So in this way, you're going to get this slight flash that appears. You saw it there briefly. There briefly said loading. After it fetched the data, it painted the screen. And that's, once again, this is bound here. So Blazor knows that when this thing is updated, repaint this area of the page, and it does that for us. Real easy for us as C#, as .NET folks, to walk through this and understand how the bindings occur, how things are referenced, how we can continue to use our .NET investments to build a website. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the template. There's so much more we can do with it. And I'm going to show you that by walking through the Hats website. Not in the next demo, but the demo after that. All right, let me go back to the slides, and let's talk about this one. Let's talk about progressive web apps. So it's one thing to be able to just have that app that runs in the browser, but what if I want to make that a progressive web app? What if I want to make it so that it'll run offline or receive notifications from the server and aggressively cache content in the browser so that it's not loading some of those things every time? And you can do that by turning on features to make your application a progressive web app. Now, progressive web apps, that was a standard that was set forth by Google and has evolved, and you'll see a lot of the Google apps that you navigate to online, they have this technology baked into it, so that their scripts, their resources load very, very fast in your browser. And it makes sense. Don't spend time downloading this content, activating and rendering things on the browser when it's already there. And we don't have to worry about it. So in the world of Blazor, where we're sending DLLs down to the browser, let's load up as much of content as we can in the browser, in that offline storage, so that we can get that great interaction that we're looking for. You saw how fast and how easily things reacted when I navigated around. I want that when I start building really big applications, so that folks can work with the application even when they're offline. So I showed you there is a command line switch that you can use to activate, to light up progressive web app features. And there's only 4 places in your code. We put hooks into the ASP.NET runtime, into the Blazor runtime, so that it knows how to build and render content appropriately for every browser. First thing you need to do is in your CS project file, you need to have an entry here for service worker assets manifest. This is a JavaScript file that's going to contain an array, a collection of all of the things that your project references. Why do we do that? So that it knows exactly what content to download and stash offline. We also need to define a service worker, and that's a standard thing in progressive web apps if you've worked with them before. And there's also, the service worker is added into our dub root folder, but we're also going to add into our project file this service worker element, including a published content attribute that specifies a published version of this. Now, why do we do that? These two files allow us to work in development mode, the way that you saw me just working, where I was changing things, reacting quickly in the browser and back and forth, iterating quickly between the code that I'm writing and seeing it in the browser. When you start caching things offline with progressive web apps, you need to change this service worker file in order to get it to reload content in the browser. That's like 3 more steps that you need to go through when you're building an application that, trust me, you don't want to go through when you're trying to quickly solve a problem, because you've got those customers breathing over your shoulder saying, hey, the app isn't working. So the published version of the service worker has all the assets baked into it that you need in order to run offline. Next 2 items, you need a manifest JSON. We generate one for you, but a manifest JSON that has all the information about the icons and the configuration for how your application could be installed to run offline. Because you may want to create a full application that somebody can click on their phone or click on the start menu of their workstation and be able to see and interact with your application. And it doesn't necessarily have that browser-like feel. When you install and run an app from one of those configurations that's installed like this, you get an icon. You lose all of the Chrome around your application, and it also removes the address bar and those things. So everything that's going on as far as interactions is using just your user interface. That's a pretty handy thing to have. Last thing you need to do is you need to register the service worker. You do that with a little script like you see down here at the bottom in this service worker register tag. That's not too bad. That's pretty easy to do. Let me come back to you in just a second. There is that Lehoma. Let me come back to your question because, man, oh man, do I have an answer for you. I want to show you, though, progressive web apps for Blazor. So let me show you what this looks like. I'm going to build this exact same project one more time, but I'm going to do it with the PWA turned on here. So let me go back over here. Yeah, close that. Application's shutting down. That's fine. Let me go up one. .NET new Blazor WASM, and I'm going to call this Blazor PWA, and I'm going to turn on progressive web app switch there. So this is going to configure and set that up for me. Blazor PWA. Open that one in Visual Studio Code. I've got 2 Visual Studio Codes. That's one more than I really need. Yeah, get rid of that one. All right. So there it is. It's running. Not running, but it's right there. And I'm going to show you the project file real quick. There it is. Service worker assets. That's the service worker assets manifest. Thanks so much. I appreciate you telling me there. And down here is the service worker definition. 99% of the time, you don't need to change these things. They work just fine. But if you're adding these features into an existing application, you're going to want to tune and know where these couple things are. I also mentioned in the HTML file that index HTML that knows how to launch our application. Well, there's our reference to manifest JSON, the Apple Touch icon, and down here, there is the service worker register. Okay. And there's our service worker JS, and you can see this is in development. Always fetch from the network. Don't enable offline storage. Caching makes development difficult. Here's the published one to start. So you have control if you want to add additional features into your service worker, because maybe you want to push messages down and notify folks that, hey, there's a new version of the application, so you can tell them, hey, click this button to refresh your application when they're connected. Or maybe you want other experiences to be enabled when folks are not connected to the network. You can configure and put all that in these two service worker files, and they'll be copied and enabled appropriately when you publish your application. And the manifest, of course, this is a standard format that the folks at Google have defined that have things about where and how your application should be configured, background colors, icons that should be referenced here, the names that should appear for your application inside the service. So how are we doing on time? Jeremy, Brian, how are we doing? Am I going long here? Are we okay? I wasn't sure if I had an hour, 2 hours.
I can tell you what Brian told R. Dallas last time. You can go as long as you want. We'll stick around.
Fantastic. All right. Where'd it go? All right. We're going to move along here. That's what I was looking for. Okay. So manifest defines these things that's kind of standard for how progressive web apps work. But now when I run the application, it's going to build and install those things for me when I go to launch and interact with it. So I'm going to go back over here. There it is. It's off and running. And yes, I know it opened in the other browser. All right, there we go. This one, hard refresh. And there it is. And it's Blazor PWA. If I hit F12, so we can look at the debugger. Oh my gosh, look at all the warnings. That's okay. Let me go over to the application. What do you mean no service worker found? Should have found it. Should have found it. Should have totally found it. It was right there. Navigator service worker is undefined. Pish posh. It's there. Back over to network. Disable cache. That should be a thing. Should totally be a thing. Try that one more time. And I don't see it. I don't see that it requested it. Did it go get it? It didn't go get it. I wonder if it excluded it because we're in. Let's just do a straight .NET run. So I wonder if it didn't include it because we were in watch. Because it should be there. It was there. We saw it there. No, it's not installing it. Why isn't it installing it? Navigator service worker is undefined. Okay. Now I'm baffled. You ever run a demo on your test machine and it works properly, and when you go to deliver it to a user group, it doesn't work all of a sudden? It's right there. Service worker.-js. It's right. Why can't you find that? Come here, you service worker JS. Yeah, it's right there. See that? Give me one more hard refresh and show me. Tell me that it's not there. It's not there. It didn't load it. Like, you're kidding, right? You're gonna give me all these go away warnings. Yeah. Wow. It didn't load it. Why didn't it load it? This is the fun part where Jeff tries to debug things live on stage. I'm gonna find it because it should have loaded it and it didn't. And now you make me sad. All right, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna open another Microsoft Edge.
Jeff, do you want to answer that question while you're looking for that?
Yeah, let's answer that. So the question that came up was, have I had success with hot reload on large Blazor projects? I tried .NET 6 Preview 6, but had issues compiling during hot reload that didn't exist during initial build. You're right. On larger projects, it gets a little bit crazy, and you do lose some of that feature. We are still in preview. It is let's face it, it's kind of a complex feature that it's delivering, patching DLLs and shipping them into your browser on the fly. So at this point in the previews, you're right. It's not working like it should, but there it is. There it's reloaded. But I'm pretty happy with it on smaller applications working. We're getting there. The goal is they want to get it running properly in time for release we're still about 4 months out. It's coming. It'll get there. But on larger applications, and I've had success building larger applications, it's not quite there yet. Let me change my manifest here just so you know that this is right. This is changing and updating here. Let me call this my Blazor PWA. And I'll go back over here. I'll hard refresh. And there it is, my Blazor PWA. It's picked it up. And it's going to be able to run things. I can even run offline if I want. And it'll have everything cached. What's really great with how they've structured this is, I'm going to hard refresh here. Network is turned off, and it's not downloading any of the DLLs. Even though I told it not to cache things on the network, it's aggressively cached that and stashed them anyway behind the scenes for us. So we don't have to think about that. You don't have to have folks concerned, oh my gosh, I've got to go and download all the things all the time. No, it gets cached offline, and we're in pretty good shape with that. Here's the Blazor resources. I mentioned the DLLs to run this application. They're all right here, and it's not going to let me open this up and show you the names of these things. Come on now. Let's I'll tell you what, I'm going to nuke this, and I'll show you what it looks like when we run this the first time, and they're not in storage. There it goes. So it's loaded 22 meg. 22 meg, are you kidding? It's 25 meg to load the Twitch front page. Not comparing, but I am. We're getting there. This gets even smaller when you do have things published and you get things aggressively cached then in the browser, right? 22 meg, but it only transferred 9. So we're in okay shape. We're not breaking the banks here, going somewhere outside of bounds that folks aren't familiar with. So those are your options if you want to make this a progressive web app. So it runs offline, runs on folks' phones and tablets and whatnot as a installed application. Now, yeah, look at that. App available. Install my Blazor PWA. Don't mind if I do. Install my Blazor PWA app. I can click install. And there it is over there. Put it on the other display. So there you go. App installed. My Blazor PWA has been installed as an app. Allow this app to pin to taskbar, pin to start, create a desktop shortcut, auto start on device login. That's up to the end user how they want it to run. But I can close that up, and it looks like any other application. We know it's a web browser, but that's not bad. That's not bad at all. Now, this is in contrast to what's coming with .NET MAUI. .NET MAUI is going to be an actual, almost Chromium-like application where it's hosting a Blazor runtime inside of a native application on your machine. Really cool stuff that's coming in .NET 6 that I want you to make sure you check out coming soon. All right, so we've done the basics here with building a Blazor application and getting it running, and we're going to get into there in just a second. But let's talk about that next step. What happens when I want to run a website, that static website, because it doesn't have anything running on the server. I want that running as cheap as possible out on the big Microsoft Azure. So there's always been a way for you to run Azure static websites. You stood up an Azure storage service, which lets you host blobs, tables with NoSQL storage tables, queues, and you could click this option, it's over there, that says static website. And it would give you, put it in this folder with this structure and will serve your application. And 1.8 cents per gigabyte per month of storage, and another 0.4 of a cent for every 10,000 reads. But here's the thing, 10,000 reads, if you've got a lot of files inside your project, you might be going through 100 reads just from somebody navigating around your application. And that means you have 100 people visit your application and you've hit that 10,000 reads. you have 200 people visit your application, 300, 400, 500. Now it's starting to cost you just for people visiting. So that's kind of weird. But we're still talking about pennies to run that. But there's now a service that is called just Azure Static Websites. Now, this lets you place your content, your static HTML with whatever you want to run on in the browser. So maybe you want to run an Angular application. Easy for me to say there. An Angular application in the browser. You can do that. We want to run a Blazor application, but what about data access and business logic? So what they've done is they've made Azure Functions provisionable in the same application that hosts your static content and will run in a consumption plan out on Microsoft Azure. Now, Azure Functions can run very, very cheaply for you if you need to put your business logic or data access out there so it interacts with a database or something. You can do that, and you won't be spending much at all to interact with those functions. Now, the endpoints in those functions that are deployed with your static website are optimized for HTTP access only. So you can only communicate with those as though they were a REST-like endpoint. You're not going to be able to trigger things in those functions from a queue or a service bus or a blob being created. It doesn't work that way. Just from HTTP endpoints. That's okay, because you know what? Running this service is free. Up to 100 gigs, 2 domains, an SSL cert, half a gig of storage, function use. Like, okay, now we're talking. Pricing details are at that link. You can go and bingle for it and take a look at it. If you're running just a static website and you're not hitting a database or interacting with anything else, it's free. Do it. Stand it up. If you're building a standalone, and I'm thinking of oh my gosh, I'm thinking of the pre-rendered content. Hugo, the static websites, they're called. Oh, remind me, friends. That technology stack that uses I'm blanking on the term. Jamstack. Thank you. The Jamstack websites, you can build and deploy them and host them out here completely free on Azure Static Websites. So why not? Like, yeah, do it. And even better, you get GitHub integration. It will automatically build your website with GitHub Actions. It'll deploy your website with GitHub Actions, and it'll even give you staging slots. Have you ever used the staging slots on Azure App Service? They're a really cool feature so that you can do like A/B testing, be able to go to a full running instance of your application running on Azure, but kind of right next to the production spot. It's not here, it's over there. So you go over there and you can see your application running, and it's got all the exact same configuration as the production site, but it's over there. Here's the problem. It's a pain in the neck to set up a staging slot. And when you build and deploy to decide, oh, no, I want to go over to the staging slot and not the production one. But we've got it all automated and built for you so that it just works. It just deploys. It just puts it in the right place. It puts it where you expect it so that you can navigate and test and have that public beta site that folks can go to and interact with and give that thumbs up that, yeah, it looks right. And you can merge it in automatically with the rest of the live website. I got to show you what this looks like, because this is a technology that I have absolutely fallen in love with as a partner technology to work with Blazor. It's the bee's knees. I sound like my grandfather. It's hot spit. Now I sound like my mother. It's amazing stuff. You got to check it out. Let's go over and let's stand up a Blazor static website. So here's the thing. First thing you need to do this is you need to configure a static application out on the big Microsoft Azure. So I'm going to create a static web app. There it is, static web app. I'm in create resource. Give me a static web app template. There it is. Create one of those for me. And it's going to create one of those and give me some place that I want to go build it. Sure, put it there. I don't care. Give me a resource group to put this in. Sure, we'll choose that one. Give me a name for the static web app. So we'll call this Baton Rouge Demo. Sounds good. And I have two different plan types. There's a free level that's free for hobby or personal projects. And there's a standard level that'll get you an SLA. It'll get you a service level agreement. It'll get you some other assurances and some additional capacity. And it's only $10 a month. I'm going to go with free. We'll put that in central US. Where am I deploying from? Well, I'm going to deploy from GitHub. Now, I need to stand up my application. I need to get the template running on GitHub so that Azure knows where to load it from. So I'm going to go over here to the static web dev Blazor starter template. This is a repository here that you can use to build other applications. So I'm going to click use this template, and I'm going to call my repository name here. What was I calling it? Baton Rouge Demo. All right. And I'll give it a description. Demo for the Baton Rouge user group. Okay. We'll make this a public repository, and there we go. Create it. So it's going to go create this repository for us on GitHub. And in just a few seconds, there it is. It's got an initial commit. It's got 3 folders to this. There's an API, and this contains an Azure function that we're going to have running. So here's my Azure function. And for those of you that are used to seeing Azure functions, this should look identical to what you've done in the past with C#. For those of you that have not used it, an Azure function is just a serverless bit of code that runs in the cloud, hosted on Azure, that you define and tag with a function name attribute. It knows how to trigger what HTTP location that's going to request and trigger this function, along with the code to actually run when that location is requested. Pretty easy to follow. The client folder up here off the root, this is our Blazor application. I can click down into the client CS proj, and you'll see this is actually, the template comes with an older version of this. It comes with the .NET Core 3.1 version of Blazor by default. You can upgrade this to .NET 5 and even some of the .NET 6 previews because .NET Core 3.1 is the current long-term supported version of Blazor. So the Azure folks are supporting the long-term supported version with their templates, so we get the .NET Core 3.1 version. Finally, the shared folder here is it's a little class library, .NET Standard class library, that you can use to create classes that you want to share between your Azure function and your Blazor WebAssembly application. So a little weather forecast object. We saw this before. Same class, same demo, same template that we're going to deploy. So there's our about. Looks good. And I'll go back to create static web app. I will sign in with GitHub here. It opened another screen over here for me to authorize connection. I will say, yes, you can connect and authorize that. So now it's connecting over to GitHub. Choose my GitHub account. Yes, in C# Fritz. Organization is C# Fritz. My repository. I have a few repositories. I'm going to scroll down here. Baton Rouge Demo. There we go. Branch. We're going to have it build from the main branch. Fantastic. Build details. This is the part where things are a little bit different for each framework that you choose. What framework is this that you want to build with? This is a Blazor application, so we're going to choose Blazor. The application is in the client folder. The API location is in the API folder, and we're outputting the www root inside the client. All right. We're going to preview. It's going to show us what our GitHub action is going to look like here. Trust me, it looks good. I'm going to review and create that, and it's going to go and connect up. Go ahead, create that for me. I said create that for me. Thank you. It's going to start deployment. And if I go back over here to GitHub, we should see in just a second here. There it is. There's my GitHub action there, right there, that we just saw it render and say, oh yeah, here's how we're going to build and deploy. So on push to the main branch or a pull request, when a pull request is open, synchronized, reopened, or closed, we're going to build on the main, on a pull request on the main branch. We're going to build. We've got a job here called build and deploy. So if it's a push or if it's a pull request and it's not a close pull request, we're going to build and deploy. And here's how we do it. So there's a specific action here called Azure Static Web Apps Deploy. It has tokens that it created inside my repository for how to connect out to Azure, and those configuration folders for how we're going to connect to Azure. So it's going to upload the contents after it's done building. So it builds and uploads everything. Now, if there's a pull request that's been created, it's not listed here, but what it's actually going to do is it's going to create a staging slot for us automatically. And when a pull request is closed, it's going to go in here and it's going to close and destroy that staging slot for us. Now, I've been killing time here to see if this is done deploying. There it is. I can go to the resource and I can go to this really weird name, Ambitious Water, blah, 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 Azure Static Web Apps.net. I'm going to click that. My Azure Static Web App is live and it's waiting for content. All right, so if we take a look at our actions over here, look at that. It's building. 2 minutes ago, it started building, and it's going to finish building and deploying right there. So we're going to get this continuous integration process built by default, happening, deploying, and sending content out to the big Microsoft Azure that we can interact with. There we go. 15 seconds. It's going to be done deploying here any second now. It takes about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to deploy the initial template when it starts running out here. So we're almost done. Come on, show me that it's done. 30 seconds. I know it's almost done there. Show me that first website, because I want to refresh and show our friends out there they can get to this website and it's running live in the browser. No whammies, no whammies. Come on. And there it is. And it says visit your website at that location, which is right here. I'll refresh. And there it is. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to share that in Twitch chat for you so that you can click through and take a look at that website if you'd like. There it is. If you want to click through and take a look at it. Now, that's fine. There it is. And I can go through and I've got the counter there and I've got the fetch data sample. Fetch data is fetching that data from our Azure function. Okay. That's something. If we go back over and look at my application running here, right, I've got configuration in here that I can light up and tune appropriate for my application, right? Role management, hosting plan I can interact with. But there's environments that'll show me the staging slots that are deployed and available for my application. Now, I mentioned I can interact with this and I can stand up and change content and create staging slots when I build a pull request. So let's put in our first pull request here. I'm going to go into my client application. I'm going to click down into my pages. I'm going to go into the index and let's edit this right here, right in the browser because I'm feeling lucky. Let's get rid of the survey prompt. And let's say, hello, Baton Rouge. Go LSU Tigers beats Florida. Okay. So I'm going to update index. I'm not going to commit it into the main branch. I'm going to commit it to a new branch over here, propose those changes. And it's obviously for what we're doing here, it's pretty simple change that we're creating, but I created this pull request. Look at that. It's already woken up and it's going to build and deploy the job to a new staging slot. It's going to download everything and build and deploy to a staging slot that we can connect into and interact with. So now we're talking. Now we're in somewhere where GitHub and Azure have enabled my workflow. I want folks to create pull requests. I don't want things to be pushed directly into the main branch. Go and interact with the pull request and let me review that. I don't want to have to go and browse and clone everything down and look and run it locally. Go out to Azure and see it, and here it comes. Excuse me. So here it is. It's getting everything set up for us. Configuring the .NET CLI so that it'll run inside the container that GitHub Actions is running. Restoring packages. Now, there are ways to cache some of this content when you're building with a GitHub Action. I haven't seen a way to do it yet with the Azure Static Web Apps. This is still like version 0.1 of the Azure Static Web Apps. So we've got a long way to go to tune and improve this, but you're getting this for free, So it's like, I'm okay with it taking a couple minutes to deploy a change here. So we'll see it finish restoring. It's going to build. The build should run very, very quickly here. See that, 10 seconds. And now it's deploying, and we'll wait for it to deploy, and we should see not this site updated, but a staging slot that we'll click through and we'll see is just slightly different, has some of the text that we updated there. And we can talk further about what that means and what happens after we've looked at our staging slot. So there we go, 15 seconds. We saw it was about 45 seconds that it uploaded. So we'll give it another few seconds here, and we'll see our new website appear live on Azure. There it is right there. And I got it this time. Hello, Baton Rouge. Hello, go LSU. Tigers beat Florida. So this completed successfully. I've got a green check next to my pull request. All checks have passed. It ran all these things. And I can go to a website and I see this content. Now, it's different from what's running over here on my live website at ambitious water, blah, 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 10.azure static web apps. Notice it's ambitious water hex hash here -1. The staging slots are named the exact same thing as what you have for production, except it's got the region in here and it's got dash pull request ID number. This way, we know it's unique, it's specific to this pull request, and I can tell if it works or not interacting with things just in that test environment. Really cool stuff that means that I can interact and test and verify that these things work. So you like the ambitious Whataburger beat? I do too. It's very ambitious. I like my other spirits to be ambitious also, but I'll take water. That's ambitious enough for me. Okay. So when I'm done this, I've approved. It looks good. We can of course merge the pull request, and what it's going to do is it's going to kick off two actions now. It's going to merge that pull request, and what it's going to do is go and destroy the environment that was created over here. See, there's the environment it had created for me for that branch that I created. So there's the title. That's the name of the pull request that I gave. And as it's done building that, as it's done processing this merge pull request action here, it's actually going to delete and knock down that environment for us. So it's going to finish pulling in the container and get that all set up. So Baton Rouge needs less ambitious water. To each their own. You know what I'm saying? That's okay. So there we go. And decompressing. There we go. Bang. Done. And come on. There it is. See it deleting? It's going to be gone in just a few seconds. There it is. Gone. Because it's now merging into the production space. So I'll go back up here and look at that. There. Merge pull request on main. And it's building and deploying right here. So we'll see it out on this website in just a few seconds. Yeah, there we go. deploying them. We'll see it appear in just a little bit. Now, to the question earlier, well, gosh, have you built anything larger than this? Well, that's where this hat website came from. So I've got a few hats. Not gonna lie. If Mrs. C# Fritz was in the background and she could hear me, she'd yell into the room, "He's got too many darn hats." Maybe not in that family-friendly language, but you know what I'm saying. So I built a website and it's sitting out here at hats.csharpfritz.com, and easy to key in, and it's got pictures of about half my hats. And this is a Blazor static website. It's serving images. I don't need to put these somewhere in a database or something like that. I've got it stored in Azure Blob Storage, so I can just pull it out and paint it on the screen. And I'm not paying a thing for this other than for the storage of these images. And I even built a little search feature up here in my Azure function so that I can go in and search for a hat if I wanted to. So let me find my Penn State hats. And there they are. There's 2 Penn State hats that I've got cataloged in on there. So I've got the Navy Lion logo over here, and I've got my Penn State Gray S hat, and that's fine. I can reset, and I can go look for other hats here. What about, I've got a NASA hat out there, don't I? Where's my NASA hat? There it is. I've got the 80s style NASA logo. I have another NASA hat that it'd be great if I put on here. I need to get that one loaded. The Mandalorian hat, and you can flip through here. These are just little CSS effects that are flipping that around. It's all CSS and Blazor WebAssembly. And the source code for this is sitting right here, C# Fritz hat collection. So if you want to see how this website works, click through, take a look. This is pretty easy to see how this works. In fact, let's update it and let's put a link here that says source code at. I mean, why not? Let's just put it up there. So thank you. Now I'm logged in. Pages, go into my index. I clicked into my index. Thank you. So there's the hat columns. It's actually in the layout. So let me back up one here. This is Octo Tree that I'm using. It's a browser plugin to give me a full folder structure I can navigate through. So let me go down to shared main layout. And there it is, a streamer's hat collection. And right, I can just edit this and put a link after that. Right. Oops, don't do that. That would be bad. Ahref, something like this, something like that. Source code on GitHub. Okay. And I can save and commit those changes. I'm feeling lucky, commit them directly into main. And it'll update that website right now. So it's a very simple website that I've built that just presents this collection of hats that I've got. I've got them stored in the database so that it knows where to get the data points to present here. But there's nothing saying that this couldn't be a JSON file sitting on disk. Or maybe it's a CSV, and I'm using a library like link to CSV to just query data out of that and paint it on screen. I didn't want to put the hat images in the GitHub repository. I could have. I didn't want to put them in there. I figured it was better to put them in a blob repository so that I could upload new images as I get them without having to deploy a new version of the website. Could certainly go that way. Could certainly use that technique. But I wanted to use just a little bit more of Azure to build and deploy this website. And it feels pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this simple website showing off and allowing folks to tinker and search through a little bit of my hat collection. So I feel pretty good about how that works. And this is going to build and deploy, and we should have it live in just a few seconds here. So yeah, let's get straight to production, right? I mean, come on. Let's not mess around here. Just ship it already. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, I've learned a few things in building and working with Azure static websites, and this is a simple Azure static website that I've built. If you've seen my stream at all in the past few months, you've probably seen me working on another website that's geared towards and specific for Twitch clips. And it's a website called ClipTalk. And we've learned a few things in building Blazor static websites. And this website takes advantage of all of them. We're using Azure Search. We're using MySQL running in the cloud. We're using Service Bus. We're using a second Azure Functions app so that we can navigate around and present some of this information and do some of the rich interactions and data calculations that you're going to want if you're searching for and you want to learn more about folks that are streaming and doing cool things on Twitch. So we built this website, and I say I built this website, and it continues to grow, and I wanted to host it and allow it to do things to interact with search engine optimization. So I stood up Azure Front Door and a whole bunch of things to augment and support the ClipTalk website experience. And it reflects very much what's happening on Twitch. Really cool stuff. If you want to see something that's really pushing how to use some of these things together, check it out. Cliptalk.com, KLIPTOK.com. So I'll go back to the Hat Collection website, refresh, and that link, there it is, source code on GitHub. And it goes to the right place. We can move that and place it appropriately, but that's fine for right now. So we've updated websites. We've built websites. We've got some very rich interactions for our websites. And we've even built a really big website that maintains, I think it's upwards to 10 to 6 gig of data, almost 3.8 million clips on Twitch that you can search through, interact with, all using Blazor and Azure static websites. And this website that I'm using here literally costs me a nickel a month. And that's just because of how I store the images out there on the website. Literally, it's free for me to use. A nickel is nothing. Okay. It literally costs me more to pay the Azure bill for this website than the website actually costs. Moving on, let me give you some of the tips and tricks, some of the things that I've learned in building websites that are static running on Azure. So, Burger B says their daughter likes my Captain America hat. Very cool. Thank you for highlighting that. Yeah, it's right over there. Yeah, absolutely. I think, is the Pong hat up there? The Pong hat should be up there. There's a couple other ones out there that are really cool. So some tips and tricks that I've learned in building and working with the website. So Azure Storage, store cache static content. You can use blob bindings to write content in your Azure functions. You're not using a blob trigger, but a blob binding so that it knows how to interact and work with it at 1.8 cents per gigabyte. And they charge per gigabyte, rounding up to the next gigabyte. Come on, that's pretty good as a place to store. And all those images that I'm storing, I'm not even at 100 meg yet. So I'm paying 1.8 cents just for those images. That's not bad. So, right, the tags that you use here, it's an attribute, blob attribute, and file access read write into my cached files repository. Use some connection string that you have saved in your Azure function configuration. And you're going to connect to a cloud blob container, and you can start working with files inside of that location. So I'll say var blob equals, we'll get some blob reference to file.txt or whatever it is that you want to interact with. And then you can do your thing. You want to upload content into it. You want to read from it. Well, await blob dot whatever method and go work with it. That's kind of the easy way to do file interaction from your Azure function and take advantage of storage out there from your static website. Stand up additional function apps to run background or long-running processes. So I have a second Azure Functions app running for ClipTalk that actually goes and synchronizes all of the clips from Twitch. It wakes up every so often, goes and checks for new clips, and loads them into the website. I don't have to do a thing. Twitch broadcasters don't have to do anything. ClipTalk just finds and loads their data. They're they're not aware. They don't need to be engaged to do that. But you can also use those function apps to ping the primary function app to keep it warm, make sure it's still responding and interacting. So because the function app will go to sleep after 5 minutes of interactivity. And if your website isn't being hit that frequently, it's nice to go and trigger it and make sure that it responds and keep it warm. That's fine. That's real easy to do. And you see source code for a ping method that I wrote right there. And it wakes up once every 4 minutes on the second of every 4th minute and goes and calls an API echo endpoint. Real easy to do. And that timer handler, the queue handlers you can use are going to mean that you can stand up and do some other more heavy lifting logic with your functions to keep your application running. Another thing you can use is Azure Search. Now, I do this with ClipTalk right now, and I didn't put it into the Hats website because I've only got 50 hats up there. But on ClipTalk, I've got 700 channels out there you may want to search through, and Azure Search is free for a total index size of upwards to 50 meg. Think about that, 50 meg. If you're loading a couple thousand data points, 50 meg can hold that pretty easily. You can write and query that for free. So the way I interact with and I query my search index for ClipTalk is I use an HTTP client, and I set an API key that's defined in the Azure Search service, and I do a client get from JSON async. I have a search result type that I created that mirrors what the results from search look like, from Azure Search looks like. And the connection is, you would use a curl command if you were out at the command line, but this connection is kind of easy to follow. My search windows.net indexes my index. That's the name of your index. It'll give you the format of this when you go to Azure Search and you start testing it. But I pass in my search text. You see it there in the middle of the screen, HTTP utility HTML code, the text that I'm searching for, this search text. And I actually wrap it with a dot star so that it's doing a regular expression match and match against the full text of the contents in my index. Real easy to interact with. How you load data into Azure Search is up to you. I pointed Azure Search at a table in my storage account, and it just indexes things that arrive in that table or when records change in that table. So all I'm doing is saving data. It gets indexed in Azure Search, and this knows how to query it. I love it. I don't have to think about a thing. It just processes all the things for me, and it's free. Like, okay, now instead of paying just a 1.8 cents a month, fine, I'll throw another penny on the heap, and I can index and a bunch more data search and present it on screen. Psh, sure, why not? Now, it starts to cost a little bit more when you bring in Azure Front Door. So I use Azure Front Door to merge together all kinds of assets into one application. So I have the static website, I have the storage available out there and merged into Azure Front Door. So I can put assets in there that are static content that I want to be able to reach out and interact with and have it come from the same website. Or maybe any other app services you want to serve. So one thing I've done with ClipTalk, because WebAssembly isn't rendered by search engines, I actually stood up an alternate rendering using a very small Azure app service. It's a basic instance. I don't care about it sharing memory. I'm going to output cache the content of this for days on end. But when a search engine tries to get to one of the addresses that ClipTalk serves and responds to using Blazor, that there's a Blazor route for, Azure Front Door recognizes that it's a bot. And instead of serving the Blazor content, that request comes into Azure Front Door and hands off to not the static web app, but because it's a bot, it goes to my little Azure App Service and returns whatever the Azure App Service renders, which is just some text that's search engine optimized to present for Google, Twitter, Facebook, Discord, whatever. But it's not something that's trying to paint and render video players and all the other accoutrements around my website over there. It's just the text that Google wants to see. Fantastic. And that's that third bullet there. I route requests from search engines and social media bots. Now, Azure Front Door starts to get a little expensive. It's going to cost you more than a few pennies to run this. It's going to run a couple bucks. This is something that I added because I was building something that I wanted search engine interaction with. So I added this on. If you're building something that has just a Blazor front end and you don't have concerns around search engine interactions, don't worry about this. I'm hearing thunder outside here. I want to run through this real quick so that I don't lose you there. If I get cut off, I apologize, friends, and I hope you have a great evening. Last things that I want to talk about. Last one here. Activate Azure App Insights for your static website. There's an App Insights instrumentation key that you can add into your Azure function that'll start instrumenting your app. There's now actually, that's the way you used to do it. There's now actually a button you can press and it'll activate application insights for your project so you can track and see the logs of exactly how folks are interacting with your Azure static web app. Make sure you regularly inspect and clean up the environments created by pull requests. Let me show you real quick here. We were looking at my Azure console over here. You saw down here in staging, now it says no results. You're only allowed a maximum of 3 of these. So if you have more than 3 live pull requests, when that 4th one comes in, that 4th pull request, it'll fail building that pull request because it won't have a staging slot to deploy to. So make sure you clean these up, because if you close a pull request faster than it's done cleaning up or building one of these, you can actually get GitHub and Azure slightly out of sync here, and it'll still have the staging slot even though the branch is gone and the pull request is closed from GitHub. So make sure you check in here every now and again and clean up and delete any staging environments that aren't needed anymore. So, all right. That's all I had. Thank you so much, friends, for having me. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jeremy, there hanging out. Very much appreciate you fellas having me and talking about Azure static websites tonight.
Awesome. No, we very much appreciate you coming and talking about Azure static websites. This is awesome.
Cool.
I really appreciate it. I know I got a lot out of it. I hope everybody else did too. Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming out and joining us. I did have one little tidbit or note for you. In the Baton Rouge area, you spell go Geaux. So,
I got you there.
I don't want to get in trouble with all the LSU fans out there.
That's right.
They'll come after us, and we'll have to get rid of the BR in our user group. But so,
I see that. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to poke fun. But no, really, we do appreciate you coming out. Like I said, thank you so much for everything you do for us. Quick plug for your Twitch or anything else you want.
Yeah, so I'm over at twitch.tv/C#Fritz. We're continuing working on it. If you want to see, working on a live Azure static website. We're working on that big Clip Talk website every day, adding new features. We just added not just transcriptions to the website, so you can search not just on the title of a clip, but what on folks say in the clip. That's slowly rolling out. We have that on about 100 different channels right now. But we're also detecting content safety warnings on those and IAB categories. The International Association of Broadcasters have categories that they designate for their content. We're detecting those categories. It's not always perfect. Sometimes it's actually kind of fun what it detects from what folks are talking about on a clip. But we're tagging and adding more information, more metadata to tags automatically using artificial intelligence, Blazor, and Azure. Really cool stuff, and I've been having a lot of fun building and deploying it.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, I know personally, I tend to have your stream and other .NET streams on in the background as you work. It's really nice to have. You learn awesome tidbits. I mean, the Azure search thing, yeah, that's going to solve a problem that I'm having right now. So
oh my gosh,
it's almost like you're cheating.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mentioned I wired it up to Azure Storage for Azure Table Storage. You can also point it at Cosmos DB or Azure SQL, the Microsoft SQL server in the cloud, and it will analyze and read tables in those databases and automatically create indexes for you and manage those indexes as well.
Nice.
It really feels like cheating, and it's pretty impressive service.
And the cost effectiveness is just outrageous. So
Yeah.
I know we've been doing some other stuff on this channel around that. And just next month, I'm going to force myself to talk on Azure Functions. So
cool.
All the new people here, thank you so much for coming out. Like I said, second Wednesday of every month. Some Sundays, we need to get back on the Sunday streams, but we'll figure that out. I've been lazy. So anyway, other than that, anything else you'd like to say before we go?
That's all I have for tonight. Have a good evening, and hope everybody stays safe, stays healthy.
All right. See y'all later.
All righty. Take care.